Fisherman's Stories Paranormal Tales Part 1. Something is appealing about sitting in a boat in the middle of a misty lake, isolated from the outside world. Miles away from society and a place to think and be peaceful. It all sounds great, but there have been some encounters with these lone fishermen. What do you do if you know you are alone but you turn around and see someone else in the boat with you? This is a small collection of the creepiest fisherman encounters. The Scream. My cousin and I were fishing late at night. We decided to go around 9 p.m. since that's when it's the best time for us to get a bite. We got to our spot, and there was nothing but the two of us, the lake, and your normal chirp chirp or some other random animal sounds, which we were used to. About 30 minutes into our peaceful night of fishing, suddenly things went quiet. If you have ever gone to our spot, you know that just does not happen. We didn't say anything, and we kept on with our night, but suddenly there was a loud, screaming sound coming from behind us. I turned to look at my cousin. By this time, his face was pale, and we asked out loud at the same time, "Did you hear that?" "Yes, I did." "What was it?" "I don't know, I've never heard that before." As much as we both tried to ignore it, we kept alert, but then it passed, and after about an hour or so, we had forgotten about the incident. We didn't catch much, so we decided to pack up and call it a night. When we were headed back to our truck, we started hearing rustling leaves behind us. We turned around, thinking it was an animal, but nothing was there. We kept on, and right as we were about to hop in our truck, a woman appeared right in front of us, a few feet away. She looked dirty and a little beat up, with some blood stains on what seemed to be a nightgown of some sort. We shouted, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" She continues to stare at us. Then the shrieking scream we had heard before came out of her mouth. My cousin and I were petrified and got into the car and drove off. We haven't gone to our spot ever since. We have never told anyone what happened, but I can still hear that scream from time to time. Eddie G., the medium. My two buddies from the war and I go about twice a year on a weekend-long fishing trip. We catch up on our lives and rent a cabin, as usual. But this year happened to be that one of my buddies was sick, so when I told my other friend about it, he told me that his cousin was in town and that he could fill in. So we took off to our spot. Once we got there, it was late in the afternoon, but we had enough time to set up our gear and head down to the boondocks. Among some of the things we take with us, there's a weather/emergency radio in case of an emergency. We set it up on any FM frequency and chill out till we catch something. Between us talking and getting to know more about my friend's cousin, the radio started to make a crackling sound, which it had never done before. Then the radio mysteriously switched from FM to AM, which I thought was weird since it has a little button on the side that you need to press in order to change it. We called it a night, but my friend's cousin looked distracted. He kept looking at the lake and smiling, and there was also a hint of fear in his eyes. When we got to the cabin, we headed towards the kitchen because we heard a loud noise. All the dishes had been thrown to the floor, and my radio was still making the same strange sound. My buddy's cousin comes up to me and tells me, "Don't worry, it's the spirit of the man who lives here. He just doesn't like you guys coming here." I looked at him puzzled, and my friend later explained to me that he's a medium. I'm not much of a believer, but now things have changed. Joe V., the wreckers. Back in the colonial days, there were people called wreckers. They would stand on beaches with lanterns and trick ships into running aground, then loot the ship and kill anyone who survived on the beach. They'd then drag their bodies back to the water to make it look like a normal shipwreck. Well, one night on East Beach in Rhode Island, I was fishing with my father, and as we got down to the beach, we saw some odd drag marks in the sand. After about a half hour of casting, we made our way back to the truck, and as we hit the parking lot, our German Shepherd started acting really weird. We were loading up the truck with our gear when we saw a light coming out of the dunes. As we got a good look, we saw it was an old 17th or 18th century lantern. We then saw 2 more lights, and 4 people walked out wearing colonial clothes. At that point, we just threw everything in the truck, picked up our now growling dog, and blasted out of there. As we pulled out, our lights went right over the people, and we saw they were wearing ratty colonial-style clothes. It really freaked us out. Stripers Online, the German soldier. Only once when I was fishing did I have a ghostly experience, and that was when I was fishing at a lake in France. I'd been there for a couple of days, and my time was really nice and peaceful. There was an old chateau nearby, riddled with bullet holes from the Second World War. Anyway, this lake is in a French army training area, so it was pretty secluded. During the late afternoons, I had the feeling of being watched from the woods at the far end of the lake. Each day, at the same time, the feeling would return, usually around dusk and from different areas, as if whatever it was getting closer. I remember waking on the last night of my trip. Outside the bivvy, it was very foggy, and I could hardly see the dim glow of my bite alarms. I decided to make a brew, and as I flicked on the lighter, the sparks silhouetted the face of a helmeted German soldier peering into my bivvy from the darkness outside. The next morning I packed up and went home, but not before speaking to an old French estate warden, who told me that the chateau had seen some fierce fighting when the Americans liberated that area of France. The Germans had fled into the woods, only to be ambushed by a patrol and reserve. They were all killed and buried around the lake. I don't think I'll fish there again. Stripers Online, Perfume. My buddy and I were fishing at a certain fort in Jamestown, Rhode Island one night, soaking bait. At one point, my buddy decided to walk to the boat dock, about 50 yards away. The whole walk there, he said, he sensed someone behind him and heard footsteps. He thought I was walking with him, but when he turned around, he was alone. He said it creeped him out pretty bad, and he never went back to that spot with me. Now flash forward to next summer. I decided to fish this spot by myself. I had completely forgotten about my friend's experience. I got to the dock, unloaded everything, and started to soak some bait. It was a clear, moonless night with no wind or breeze. He said it creeped him out pretty bad, and he never went back to that spot with me. Now flash forward to next summer. I decided to fish this spot by myself. I had completely forgotten about my friend's experience. I got to the dock, unloaded everything, and started to soak some bait. It was a clear, moonless night with no wind or breeze. About a half hour into watching my rod, I started to smell perfume around me. I thought it was pretty weird since I was the only one there. The smell kept getting stronger and stronger, so I walked about 10 feet to my right, and the smell disappeared. I walked back to my original spot, and the perfume smell was still there, stronger than ever. It was strong to the point that my nose started to burn. At that point, I said, "Where the hell is the smell coming from?" Soon after I said that, the smell disappeared. That's when I packed up and left. I've never been back to that spot. At that point, I said, "Where the hell is the smell coming from?" Soon after I said that, the smell disappeared. That's when I packed up and left. I've never been back to that spot. Stripers Online.